All right. Hello. Good morning. Let's see. So I've been um, writing documentation, and it's rough writing documentation when you're trying to like impact is about managing complexity, and like it's so hard to create like examples or to get to the core of the complexity like with simple examples. it's it's just horrible. And especially now, it's data fetching uh, that we've been looking at. Let's see, do we have? Yeah. So we kind of start the whole journey of like asynchronous state management is complex in and of itself, but as part of the learning documentation now, we kind of go into that like asynchronicity is complicated, and that signals they have first class support for promises, so you can observe promises and you can use them with the use hook. So that's interesting. But there's more to data fetching than this promise. So I updated the queries and mutations documentation, because this also ties into how you do nesting of stores, and I still can't quite get to the core. Like, I wonder how intuitive it is. Like with like how should I put this? How should I put this? Like, it's very hard to explain when do you need a nested store, right? I know it solves like a very specific thing, which is like you have some state dependency. So, for example, you need a session to be able to initialize any other state management. So that's what you use a nested store for. So you can receive that session, that result session, as a prop, and then you expose the rest of your state management. But other than that, it's like, and then the question is like, how much like asynchronous state dependency do you have to your state management? So a session is a very typical one, but often not even a session. Like, you can have anonymous users as well as, but then you have like one thing is a session, but then you might have some data entity from the server, it being a post or an item or whatever, and that needs to be resolved before you can do any state management around it. For example, a ticket, like an issue in a project management solution, it's very, very nice to be able to just provide a resolved issue, and then you put all your state management around that. But it's very like, and I guess it's, I think what I'm kind of battling with is I'm building all these reactive primitives, but they are not part of solving the problem that Impact solves. Because what Impact solves at its core is just having the possibility to create a state store or create a store and receive props. Like, it's so simple. It's exceptionally simple. But it's something that we don't have, and we need it, especially with like to write proper code, in the sense that if your application requires a session to do state management, you shouldn't expose state management until you have that session. And the same goes for if editing an issue, like the state management of an issue requires a resolved issue, you shouldn't expose that state management of the issue until the issue itself has been resolved. But you don't have that many layers of this. Like you don't have like 5 nested stores. I can quite imagine that. But that's the thing. It's like I'm writing, yeah, I think this is it. I'm writing all this documentation. But if I take like the impact isolated concept, that's just a readme on the repo. You don't need all of this stuff. Yeah, I guess my question is, all these reactive primitives we put next to impact as the core store concept, do they make things, do they solve enough problems? Yeah, that's it. Do they solve enough problems to defend having this general concept of these new reactive primitives? Because the thing is, like, if you just have the store concept, you can combine mobx with React query, for example. And then you have it. It just works. Like you don't need. So yeah. So how should I put this? It's like the important part of all of this work is nested stores. It's not the reactive primitives. It's not allowing you to do query and mutate. It's not observable promises. It's none of that. You also have that with mobx. Like React supports, you can just put a plain promise into the use hook, and that will work just fine. So you can like suspend promises. Yeah, like this is the whole thing about me trying to find balance the time to spend. Like I was supposed to just do some coding here, but I'm so reflective of this. Like I need to make sure I build projects or create tools that's maintainable for my well-being. So there are 2 ways to approach it. There's 2 paths to take here. It's to make impact only about the store. So it's only create store, cleanup, and context. It's just these 3. That's all impact is. And then you can choose if you want to use mobx, legend state, or preact signals. Do we have solid signals for React? Yeah, I don't know if that's a thing, but like you could do it. Use signal. I'm not sure what. Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm doing that's the thing. Anyways, so the goal here isn't to create like a new set of reactive primitives. There are already reactive primitives that are very popular out there. So even though Anyways, so one path is to only make it about cleanup, context, and create store, and all this stuff, derived effects, promises, it's just throw it away, or create like a separate package that has nothing to do with impact. And then rather expose hooks in that store package that allows you to bind usage of these reactive primitives, so they're bound to the store. Like, which store am I observing from? And we have a debugger that extracts those values, blah, blah, blah. That's a challenge, though. Like, I have no idea how you would do that with MobX. I do think MobX has... Well, we could look at that. Anyways, that's one path. The other path is to... Like, what's the... what's the thing I'm releasing here? Is it... Yeah, I don't know. Oh. I want to do some research, MobX. I wonder, I think MobX has some interception API. Where's the actual API here? API reference. Utilities, intercept. Property name, array, object, further information. Please avoid it, but a bit of aspect oriented. Yeah, I thought about being able to... So the thing about the debugger is that Danila, I mean, we had a stream and we talked about how do we bind the signals to the store, because you can dynamically create signals. And then I thought, well, we don't really care about the instances bound to the store. We just want to know what signals are being observed in which store. So it's all about observation. And the way we can deal with that is we can proxy the return result from a store. And then we can just, whenever you access that proxy, we can check, are you accessing like a signal or whatever? And then we can wrap that in we can wrap it so that when you actually consume it, when you actually consume that signal, we can give it the context, the current observation context, and the store reference. So you have all the information you need to understand from where did this component observe, and even in a store, from where did this store observe this signal. So you can like a signal can be or some reactive primitive can be used from a nested store, from a parent store, and then it knows all about this stuff. And then when you stop observing something in a store, it doesn't display anymore in the debugger. It's all about not what's defined, but what is actually being observed. And then I thought, one thing is signals. That's very easy to make that work. But what about like something like MobX? I think there are like, you can say is observable and stuff. Like, yeah, introspection. Yeah, spy is a thing. Yeah. So you have is observable. So we can have the same proxy. So this could be a general part of creating like a MobX package with nested stores, is that you just say is observable, and if it is observable, could we then, yeah, we could probably like do something like, I don't know, intercept. Yeah, but you have to point to the property on become observed. Yeah, you have to point to the specific property. So that's the tricky thing. It's like, so we would have, so if you were to point to, for example, user.name or user.address.city, for example, and then we would see that, oh, user isn't observable in the proxy, the debugging proxy. And then what would we do there? We could do on become observed, but we wouldn't know what property to look at. I wonder if spy could be like, I feel pretty confident that it could maybe do something like you could combine the proxy with, okay, which objects have I returned here, and then you have this spy. Where's the spy? Trace. It's still property name. Listen to all events that happen in MobX. Like, what do you actually get here? Oh, you don't actually get observation. Yeah, I'm not sure. Probably there would be a way to do this, but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm also watching this YouTube video about I can't remember, levels.io or something. There's this dude who has like 1 million startups, and he's built them all with jQuery, HTML, PHP, and SQLite. And I'm wondering, like, adding these abstractions, are they like, am I solving real problems here? Like, I know I'm solving problems, but are they real problems? Like, are they problems I should spend my time resolving or try to resolve? One thing is the store thing, like nested stores. I think that's definitely worth spending time trying to resolve. But adding all these new primitives, I don't know. Like for me, it's a lot of fun trying to find good APIs. And we are finding, the problem is that there's a cost to learn something new. And it's often a big cost. And I don't want people to dismiss nested stores because they think they have to learn all these new primitives. That's way more important. How does MobX have like observable state? MobX promise. No, like Impact React is like a state management solution. So kind of like how MobX is a state management solution, Redux is a state management solution. That's what Impact React is. But instead of having a global state store, you can have nested stores. So you might have one store at the top of your application, but then you might mount another store on a specific page, and then maybe you have a feature that has some complicated or complex state management, so you mount a store around the feature. And then the stores can receive props from React and stay in sync with React and everything. So that's the thing. It's like when context in React doesn't work for us, we tend to throw away context and then we go only global. But Impact actually makes it possible to use context. Yeah, exactly. So you can get very, very far doing just global state management. But I worked on applications where it's a problem to only have global state management. Specifically, you get into this issue where there's certain state management that isn't really valid in a global scope. It's only valid when you have resolved certain asynchronous state. For example, there's certain state management that's only relevant when you have a session for the user. There's certain state management that's only relevant when you have loaded the project. There's certain state management that's only valid when you have connected to something. And you can do this globally. Like you can have these like, what do I call them? Uninitialized state fields or uninitialized state. But then you get into issues with TypeScript, for example, where you have all this state management, but it depends on something that's might not be initialized yet. And then you need to do all these checks in your code. Like, is it initialized? Is it initialized? Is it initialized? So that's what nested stores really solve. It's just putting state management around things that you know is initialized. But as I said, you have to get to a certain point of complexity, and it depends on how you use these global stores as well. But yeah, what I'm reflecting on is doing all that. Like I've been working on this for a year, and there are really two parts to it. It's just the nested stores, which means that you can use any other reactive primitive with it. If you like MobX, you can use MobX. So just like MobX was introduced with classes, Like it's a very different paradigm than React, but it was introduced with classes. And then you had MobX state tree, which is just a different way of organizing the MobX reactive primitives. And then you have impact at its core. It's just a different way of organizing reactive primitives. So you organize them really in React contexts. But yeah, but then there's this other part to it, which is like, oh, but maybe we should create some new reactive primitives, like a signal. And with a signal, maybe we can have first class support for promises. So you can observe promises in components, and you can. And then there's this new API in JavaScript called explicit resource management. And oh, that's kind of cool, because now we can do this thing. You can use that to create observation in components, which is less intrusive than the observer higher order component. But all of this is just, it's not solving a problem. It's just doing things in a different way. And I think the community, it really doesn't need a new set of state primitives. Like even query and mutation here, like they work exactly like React query, only that they are reactive primitives. I really have to think about this. Yeah, I really have to think about this. I just know that everything's gonna drown in these new reactive primitives, and it's not about that. It's about the stores. Like it could be so much simpler. But there is like but there is so for example MobX doesn't have query and mutation, and these are, but then again, like, do you really need to do that inside your state store? Maybe your data handling can be in React, like using React query. Like data fetching is something else than, arguably something else than state management. You can very well combine them. You can have a data fetching solution, and then you can have a state management solution. So what you would do here with like nested stores is that, what if you have a feature that depends on some data before you can actually do state management around it? You would use React query, you would do the data fetching in a component, and then you would pass that data into the store. And then you would define your reactive state management there. And the data would still keep up to date, because that's also one of the key parts of this store concept, is that the props you pass into the store, they are reactive themselves. So if you have React query updating some data and updating the props into the store, you can observe changes to that data, and it will always be up to date inside the store. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna create a branch of Impact React where I just remove, like in the documentation, I just remove all the primitives. I rebrand it to nested stores in React. Or even like originally I called it reactive context. Reactive contexts for React. Just at the core what that is. And then yeah, I'm gonna try that, see how it feels. And then the question is about like the debugger. But people like, does Legend have a debugger? Tracing. Yeah. Anyways, so but that would be an interesting thing to do. Would be to enhance this tracking so that you don't do tracking inside components, you do tracking from the stores, so you kind of see what values are like active at any moment in time in your application and being observed from what stores. I think that's something we would be able to build, a general debugger for that. Yeah, okay. You know what? This stream became something very different. But yeah, the actual valuable thing we're providing to the community here is the concept of reactive context. So instead of having this reconciling context in React, which doesn't scale at all, is very difficult to put state management into because you only have use state, use reducer, and use effect. It just becomes a big mess. And even with the React compiler, it doesn't help because the context value you expose to your components, it needs to change for like the components to update. And then you might have a lot of state in that context, and then if you just change one little thing, everything that consumes that context will reconcile. And this, it doesn't matter if you use the React compiler or not. So having this reactive context is the biggest value for the community. It's something new. It's something that's a pain point with global stores that it resolves. And then all these other reactive primitives, I'm not saying that they're not worth anything, but they're not contributing anything new to the community. It's just a different set of reactive primitives. Yeah, okay. Anyways, if anyone was listening to this, thanks. It helps to get it out. But yeah, we're at the crossroad. We have to make a decision. And currently I'm leaning heavily towards make impact only about the reactive context. Signal that to the community that there is something new here that at least I don't know if anyone's done anything like that. I'm very confident nobody has done it. And that has a low maintenance cost. It has the broadest range of like creating value for more people because they don't have to opt into like this new set of reactive primitives. They can just use the reactive primitives they already have, like MobX or Legend or whatever. They just get a new way of organizing their state management. which is closer to what React offers. With their context. And then I don't have to spend so much time trying to convince people that these reactive primitives are better. Yeah. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot to maintain and all of that stuff. Yeah, anyways, thanks. Bye for now.